color.
Good evening, this is the Raleigh Finance Committee. Oh boy, that's going to be bad. For the October 17th, 2017. Yeah, could you get the volume? Okay. You know, we've got a nice echo over here, so I'm going to try to not think about that. Call the meeting to order. It's 7:18. First item on the thing is hello, to approve the minutes of April 24th, 2017. Has everyone had a chance to, thank you, review the minutes of April 24th?
Yes. I make a motion that we approve the minutes of April 24th.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
I have to recuse myself. I was absent that time.
Sharon Emery and Dennis. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Minutes for September the 5th, 2017. We have a motion to accept those.
I'll second that.
I recuse myself.
Okay, any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 3. Unfortunately, the Salisbury Warrant Advisory Committee person that was going to be here, she emailed me today and she couldn't come. So we'll have to kind of proceed without her. The purpose of the meeting was to start discussions early on the Triton school budget. The Triton budget for the last at least 3 years, 5 years, a long time, but I only looking for the last 3 to 5 years only, because after that it maybe gets a little irrelevant. But of course it's been exceeding the Raleigh allocation, and Dave Peterson, the selectman's office, he came up with a list of things of the allocation versus what our actual, what the town proposed for an allocation and what our actual allocation was. And for 16, the allocation was $250,000. The actual increase was $385,000. For 17, it was $227,000, and the total increase was $484,000. And I think he's got his years wrong, but he has fiscal 18, so I think these are all step back. It should be 15, 16, and 17, 18. Anyway, that for this year, we proposed $198,000, and the allocation was $456,000, which amounted to about $650,000 in excess of our allocation versus what the actual increase is, and that unfortunately comes from free cash. And not only that, but each budget, of course, is built on the increase from the previous year, not from our proposed allocation. So you're adding on top of an already increase. Those are just, those are the numbers.
So was Salisbury, the representative from Salisbury, were they going to bring basically the same numbers that we have in our file? So in other words, are they going to show that their allocation and the actual, so that we can?
Well, I think their allocation has gone up as well, but The purpose is to try to establish a dialogue between the towns and Triton. And also, I want to point out that the school committee members that have been elected from Rowley, Newbury, and Salisbury, they've never been in the last 3 to 5 years to a Board of Selectmen's meeting, and I'll speak strictly for Rowley. They've never been to a Rowley Board of Selectmen's meeting. So how can they represent Rowley or 1/3 of the district if they've never been to a Board of Selectmen's meeting to find out what the town can afford?
We've been to the finance meeting, so.
Well, we had them one time in 3 years and that's basically when we invited them. And it wasn't strictly for budgetary purposes. You know, I would like to meet with the committee members to discuss the budget. But again, I think it's probably more important for them to meet with the Board of Selectmen, who basically can tell them what the town can afford. You know, we're
But don't
a
we-
secondary.
But don't we do that at the district, school committee meetings? You know, that they have, I know they've been canceled in the last few, but, you know, that's where the towns meet with the school committee members, and I know we've been there before and voiced our opinion on where our situation is in Raleigh.
And there's usually at least 2 selectmen that have been at those district communication
I mean,
meetings.
so, I mean, I don't,
They just
I
don't
don't know whether
listen.
they would have to come to the selectmen's meeting for what purpose, you know, I mean, the.
Well,
the
I
people
don't
that-
think the other towns have necessarily voiced what what they propose as far as a Triton budget.
Well,
I know Raleigh has.
I know that, Newbury is, I think, in favor of keeping status quo. They're happy because they've been winners the last few years with this
Right.
assessment, so they're not gonna wanna change and so to make a change, if you're talking about how they assess the schools, doesn't all of the towns have to be?
Has to be in
Yes, but
agreement.
I'm not here to discuss the change in assessment.
Yeah, but how,
I'm here to talk about, talking about the Triton overall budget.
I realize that, but you probably would have to cut the budget by $1 million in order to make an impact because of the way the numbers flow. I mean, you would have to make significant cuts for Raleigh to feel anything because the way that the formula is set up, Newbury is, is making these big gains and we're, and Raleigh and Salisbury on at that point, so in order to make up for those numbers, you probably have to cut, I bet you have to
Yeah,
cut around $1
at
million
least, yeah.
But,
in the
Right.
Triton budget
but Peter,
in order to,
Raleigh and Salisbury voting it down will defeat it,
will defeat what?
the budget.
Well, I know,
Well, we're not
then-
talking, we're
then-
not talking.
No,
about
that's
to
what I'm
point
saying,
right
but
now.
we do have
I know, but then
something.
you're really talking about gutting the school. I mean, if you're talking about making those kind of,
Well,
cuts and stuff like
I-
that, so.
Well, so we-
exactly, but, if we'll say, if the Triton budget is $1 million over, I don't care what the allocation is. We can settle that later. The core of the problem is the Triton budget has been increasing for years.
Population's
I'll-
going down.
No, I've looked at the last 10 years, and it's gone up quite.
70% of the budget though is salary teachers based, and the teachers on their annual contracts, they get 3 to 5% increases so if you do the math.
I'm not telling
I know,
Triton
but, if you do the math, you can see.
how
70.
to reduce their budget.
But what I'm saying
But-
is they've been cutting things like they cut out Italian. My son was taking Italian. That was a budget cut. They cut out. They've been consolidating like the number of people working in the library. So they have made reductions and stuff like that. How much in the way of reductions do you want to make it so that the school itself could be hurting, so people might wanna say, hey, we don't wanna go to Triton now, we're gonna go to Pope John, we're gonna go some other place. And
That's
then,
fine.
you know-
We've been having to override on the budget for police updates, for
but the fact
firemen's
is,
turnout
I know,
gear.
but people in towns say they move to towns because of the schools, not because of, you know.
Well, they're not
okay,
going to move to
building
the
a new-
town because
a
of
new
high
police
taxes.
department, building a new fire department, they're moving because, you know, people, you know, the schools are, you know, like it or not, the schools are probably the most important thing to most people who live in the
Only
town
for
and
only
stuff
for
like
maybe 10 to 12 years. Then after that,
that. Well,
you know, taxes go on for a lot longer than that.
Yeah, and you
Keep
look at
in
all,
mind-
well, there's.
all your senior citizens, now the
Well, no, they want
government,
fixed
the government
incomes.
just announced that they're gonna get a big 2% raise this year for social security.
It's nothing last year, right?
Yeah, nothing last year
Yes.
and nothing the year before.
Keep in mind too, Peter, the town just voted several months ago for $39 million complete renovation of Pine Grove, so it's not like the community's education. I was surprised it passed, to be honest, because
We don't
there is
wanna
much fewer
bankrupt the
percent
town.
of the households have young children, but I think a majority of people realize
They realize how
it's
important the schools
important
are, yeah.
schools are.
But you need to have the
So,
teachers in the school
I
too, not
mean,
just the buildings.
But
I
Peter,
understand.
you don't
Teachers,
wanna
too.
bankrupt the town either.
Oh, I realize
That's
it's
where
kind
we're
of,
getting.
But I
But
agree
I
with
think-
Peter, though. I think in order to get it to be palatable for Raleigh, you know, to keep within our means, so to speak, we'd have to cut well over $1 million. And how would you cut that in the school? Because we've seen in the last couple of years when we go to the school committee meetings, that, you know, they're cutting programs and things.
But-
And that's what they would have to cut.
I'm not,
because-
again, I'm not going to tell them how to cut it, okay? But when I looked at last year's budget, I could easily have cut $974,000 out of the budget. Some of the things were maybe a little bit painful, going from 4 classes for one grade to 3 classes. That changed the students from 16 per class to maybe 23 per class. It's a little tight, but you've got a teacher, a teacher's assistant, you've got special needs people in there, all
those
kinds
are
of
all
things.
mandated, that's not, that's a lot of those costs you're talking about with special needs and
They-
all the, like the busing, like a big chunk of that is for the special needs and for people with
Yeah, but
handicap.
other things,
if
other
you're
things
putting those-
like retirees' dental insurance, okay, has nothing to do with the kids. You
Now
want
you're going-
to
now you're
cut
getting
back
into-
on stuff?
Now you get into collective bargaining and stuff like that, and that's
Yeah,
another
well,
matter in itself. you know.
Like I say, I'm not
Trying
trying to
to-
tell Triton how to cut their budget,
Mm.
but there are certainly things that they can do, okay? Collective bargaining, yeah, sure, okay. It might hurt the teachers. But guess what? If the biggest expense is the teachers,
I know, but
you gotta
when-
do
When
something.
people talk about that, it's kind of funny because all teachers basically are getting the same kind of health insurance benefits. So if you're gonna say that you're gonna impact, because I know the cities and towns, they usually get like 48 or 42%, you know, and they have to pay 50,
No,
almost
they
50.
get 75% paid.
Who?
Triton
I'm not talking
teachers.
about teachers, I'm talking about the towns, I'm talking about they don't get the same benefits.
No, they don't.
No,
Raleigh gets,
Teachers-
Raleigh gets
But all the
52%
teachers
paid.
everywhere in the Commonwealth get those same kind of benefits, so if you're gonna try to tinker with Triton's, teachers are gonna say, hey, I can go to this other school district because we'll be doing something that nobody's ever done before, try to cut into the benefits of what teachers get, you know, because that's all ruled
Yeah, well,
by the teachers
Somewhere
have a
along the
very
line,
strong contract.
Triton has to, in their negotiations, okay, come up with something that is reasonable, that is commensurate with everything else in town. Okay, we're not a Wellesley, we're not a Sudbury.
Peter, and you haven't been on the finance board when we've had to, because of the school, take and cut every single other budget after town meeting. And it's happened,
I've been
and
on the
it
finance board
hurts.
For about 9 years.
Yeah, but I've been on for a long, long time,
Yeah.
and we had to go back, and every single budget had to take a big cut
Yeah.
because of the school. So you've got to realize that there's gotta be a middle ground somewhere.
I know, but it's kinda hard because what will happen is he'll.
Yes, it is hard,
It's
okay?
very, very hard.
But
But
it-
they
it's-
can't have everything.
It's not something that the finance committee can solve. We certainly can make recommendations, but it's something that the Triton School District has to solve. Because, you know, the town can very easily, you can't keep borrowing from free cash all the time. You have to repay it. You know, we can have the best teachers in the world as Rowley goes bankrupt. And not too many people are going to want to move into a district that has financial problems. But anyway, we would like to have open discussions with Triton about, you know, it is a major problem. And I think they have to start, Triton School has to start with the Board of Selectmen. You know, I certainly would entertain them coming to the Finance Committee, but certainly they and the Board of Selectmen would carry more weight. So,
So we're not attempting to communicate with West Newbury, with Newbury? I mean, even though they're sitting with the benefit, I mean, if we're gonna have a group discussion with our group, it should include Newbury.
I certainly can try to set something up with Newbury to see, but I think just the three towns getting together without Triton is not as productive. But sure, I can see if I can set something up with
Well,
you
just
know,
so that, I mean, they've
Newbury.
been on the benefit side for the last 2 years, but they can be just like us in the third or fourth year, you know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
you gotta look at long-term, you know, we're all going to that hole, and Raleigh's been there for the last couple of years. Newbury could be next, so I mean, you know, we probably should try to see what their long-term goals are, you know, as well as Salisbury and ourselves.
Sure.
So we can kind of say, they're not gonna budget all, well, then we know where they are. You know, if they're happy and they don't have any major projects that are going on, then, you know, we know what their future is, you know. But I mean, I think that attending the district communication meetings by all three towns, that's where we can voice our opinion.
Yeah, that's.
And they've
really
been canceling the last couple,
Yeah.
because nobody's basically said they had anything to discuss. And I know we've been screaming the most, I mean, so they know our point, you know what I mean, but we can still continue to do that. I mean, you gotta remember too, the three representatives that Raleigh has, you know, basically, if I remember hearing correctly, they said they weren't really representing Raleigh for the finances, they're representing Raleigh for the school, for the benefit of the school. So they're not looking at our, you know, the town side, they're looking at the school side. So they're not gonna look and say, because my taxes are going up, that we're, you know, gonna cut the budget. They're looking to get a good school system, which is the same thing we're trying to do, only on the town side. So we can't, you know, really
Well, but,
expect
you know,
them
to,
to vote no or cut the budget for the sake of Raleigh.
I'm not expecting them to say no or to vote no on the budget. I'm expecting them to represent Rowley, or all three towns, excuse me, on that board. And what's, you know,
Yeah.
you can't just look at the school in a vacuum. You've got to look at what effect it has on the town.
I disagree. I think that those representatives are there strictly for the school, the Triton School Regional District, nothing to do with the town side. But, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It is what it
in that
is.
case, we have no representation.
Yeah, I think that that's what the case is, you know, to be honest with you. So,
No, I think that Dina Sullivan, I mean, I think that she tries to be, you know, I mean, as best as they can, because they're always forward thinking about trying to get, you know, best for the kids and stuff like that, so those things cost money, so they're just trying to, you know, but they are mindful of the budget too, and, you know, they don't, I don't think they go overboard, you know, on what they're, I mean, I mean, if you're talking about a 2.5% or a 3% increase in the budget, I mean, again, teacher salaries make up 75% of the budget. So when you're talking about, you know, between steps and everything else, you're probably talking an average of 5% increase and on 75% of the budget. So there's not the, if everything else being the same, just by having the teachers and not laying anybody off, you're gonna have this increase. So the only way you can circumvent that is to lay off teachers.
Lay off teachers, yeah.
That's the only way you can do it. So you start laying off teachers, you start putting more students in the classroom, you start going up to 26 in size, you start cutting programs, like I know my son, what he was taking Italian, they cut that, and they cut other things, and so that's what they do, you know, they start cutting, and, you know, but then there's the concern, if you start cutting, because they have AP classes and honor classes, if you start cutting that, then the school loses their whole accreditation of what they're about, because in these AP classes, those you know, usually, you know, much smaller classes and stuff like that, so tell me where you're gonna go to cut. That's the dilemma. I mean, I've sat in many, you know, school, you know, meetings, and I've heard this stuff, so, you know, I mean, it's, you know, it's a tough situation.
And
you know.
I'll keep saying it, we're not here to tell Triton how to cut back on it.
But really, what you're saying is,
if they don't want to, okay, or if they can't figure out how to, then I'm certainly am willing to look at their budget and come up with recommendations on what they can cut, type of a thing. Because it's just like at Pine Grove School.
we're not, I mean, the only ones that really know, I mean, we can make suggestions based on bottom dollars, but we don't
Dollars,
really
yeah.
know.
We don't know
You
how
know,
the programs
we don't know
are.
how the programs run and how they interrelate, so we're not qualified to do that. You have to rely on, you know, Brian Forget and the people, his finance people, to do those numbers. We don't know, you know, how what we can't say where they cut.
Well, I know
They have
that,
to
but
be, you know,
if you look at it at a individual level, if you only have $100 left and you've got a leaky roof and a car that's not running, okay, what do? You have to sacrifice something or other. Those are tough decisions. You know, that's fine. The Brian Forges and those people, they're hired to make those tough decisions. If it was easy, we'd get a person in there that's only making $50,000. It's not easy. It's not easy to run a town on a deficit.
The schools, am I correct that Triton is about 60% of our budget? Is that an accurate?
Like
I
about
think it's more.
67.
Is it that high? So I would assume it's true for the other two towns, right? Have the finance committees of all three communities ever met together? If so, it would be before my time. But I was going to say, with just the focus on Triton, you think it'd be a good idea if we could try to get the three town finance committees together to discuss and get, you know, kind of get a feeling for how the other towns, what they're dealing with, and maybe as a unified group from all three towns, you know, we could have a joint meeting after that, perhaps with the Triton School Committee or whatever, to say to, you know, because we're always, it's like the tail is wagging the dog. We're always told what we're going to expect to pay from Triton for the following year. And it's like, if we could get ahead of that at some point and then have all three towns' finance committees meet with the school committee at some point.
Yeah, I'll try to set
That's a
something
thought.
up for,
We could probably even
Next-
meet at the Triton Auditorium or whatever, or a conference room at
well, maybe at the
Triton.
library or
Aud-
something like that.
Yeah, so it'd be a
But
neutral place.
I'll try to set something up, either for the next meeting or maybe as a separate meeting, depending upon when I can get the other two towns together.
if they're interested in it, the focus would be strictly on the Triton end,
Right.
you know, not other town issues. Just a thought.
Okay, let's move on to item 4, monthly appropriations report. I think everybody got,
You skipped four.
Skipped one,
Pine Grove.
Pine
Pine
Grove
Grove School
project.
project.
and the town meeting location.
They haven't decided on that yet,
oh,
according to the meeting.
I'm sorry. Didn't have that on my schedule. All right.
Well, here, see,
Okay. Okay, the Pine Grove School projects and town meeting. They're trying to bump the Pine Grove renovation ahead by 6 to 8 weeks, which would interfere with the town meeting, because one of the first things they want to do is to close off the old gym, or what they call the all-purpose room, and the kitchen, and start gutting that. So their proposal is to move the town meeting to the gym, where it wouldn't be a live feed, but the square footage is the same. That's the most likely proposal. Another thing would be maybe to hold it at Triton or something like that. But that's what they're discussing right now, is that the town meeting next year would be in the gym rather than the all-purpose room.
Let me ask you this, because I know when I was in Linfield, they had a big meeting one time, and they needed Ashley, the gymnasium, the auditorium, and classrooms, you know, because it was a large override that was coming up. And they hired a company to come in and rewire some of the classrooms so that they could have a live feed. And not knowing, you know, the extent of what it would take, but is there a possibility of running wires, you know, whether, you know, and I'm assuming the cable wires, you know, down the hallway or something on a temporary basis to go to the gymnasium so they could do a live feed. Now, I know there'd be a cost to that, but, you know, is the cost less than trying to relocate the town meeting or change the date? I mean, has anybody looked into that? Because I think, I mean, it's just going down the corridor, you know, I'm thinking.
Well, they're keeping the date the same, and they're keeping the building the same.
But in
so
order to
that,
do the live feed, I mean, what's entailed?
But when they talked with Janet, she said that she wouldn't be able to do a live feed, and I guess that'll be up to the selectmen to see whether they want a live feed, or right
You
now
can do a
it would be.
live feed, it's just a question of how much money it would cost to run
just
the
like,
wires. and
just
they-
like last night's selectmen meeting was not live because it was upstairs.
But
We
you can
couldn't-
run wires, connect these things, you know what I'm saying? It's a question of how much cost there is in order to do it. So I'm not saying that's a solution, but I'm just saying, has anybody thought of, you know, maybe hiring a company to come in to run the necessary wires to make it a live feed? If it's like, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 and town meeting is,
Yeah,
you know.
I don't know what the
Yeah.
And it would-
selectmen have looked
But
at.
also think about it this way. If you're really interested and you want to vote on something, you're going to be here. If you want to just know what went on at town meeting, then you can see it the next day.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the question, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there, you know, what's the cost to make it live, and, you know, is it worth doing? Maybe it's not. You know, like I said, if you just want to watch what happened, then, yeah, you put it on next day, like I watched the selectmen's meeting today.
Today, yeah, like I did too.
Yep.
Even though I was here earlier, I did go home.
I don't think that I would be amenable to having the meeting in Triton.
No.
I don't think
It's
you would
outside
get the
the community.
participation level. that
No,
you would
there's too many
hope to
things
get.
that are going on to
Can you
really
have
move
out
it
of town?
off-site.
The what?
Can you have it out of town? You know, a town meeting?
Oh, that's actually an
Yeah,
interesting.
that's a
what I mean.
question. I don't
Mm.
think you have to be within the,
Yeah,
Members
I
of the
know
town.
the other place that was being bandied about was St. Mary's.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, the basement,
Yeah,
there's a big hall, it's all
Mhm.
open.
but you
And,
still wouldn't have the live feed, so,
Right.
Right,
and so we could do the newer gym would work fine, I would think.
yeah, the floor's gonna get repaired anyway. so.
Yeah.
Well, they do the craft fair in there, so I don't think
Yeah, I
putting
know, but I mean,
chairs
they're
in
gonna
there
be
for
putting a
that.
new floor in there, so I mean, we
Are
wouldn't
they
have to
putting
worry
new
about-
floors in that, Jim?
Well, yeah, they're gonna strip off the existing layer and put a new layer on it, not
Well,
a,
I
Right.
mean, that's not old.
it's pretty bad shape.
Is it really? It's
Yeah,
not that,
in
it's,
pretty bad shape.
it's not, I don't go in other than the craft fair, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
that's one of the newer parts of the building.
Yeah, but the floor gets a beating, takes.
Oh, what I can do is bring it up at the selectmen's meeting in the citizens' query. See what, and then they can take it from there, because it's gonna be up to them, not us.
Yeah.
Okay, any other things on the Pine Grove School? Okay, let's try them, yes.
Just a point of information that they did say that the bids were going out for the fire station this week.
Right.
So it was just a point of information.
Any idea, Sharon, when they would hope to break ground? Would it be in the spring?
I
Oh.
think it might be this fall.
Oh, okay.
So they're not doing them together, the police and the fire
Yeah,
station?
yeah.
But you said the bids for the fire
Well,
station.
I'm
Oh, you
just,
meant both?
both,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
She's prejudiced for,
I kind of lean towards the fire.
Prove yourself.
yeah, it's the fire and police station. Okay, let's go to the monthly appropriations report.
I just had a question. Is there any chance for maybe the next meeting or the meeting after, doesn't make a difference, as long as it's before budget season, could we get a closeout report from last year as to what the final numbers were? We had it last year, and I know it's helpful for us to look at that to see, how each department ended up
Right.
at the end of the year.
Here's, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether has that or not, but I'll certainly look into it and see if we can get that. Okay, any comments on page 1? Moderator and selectmen. Okay, go to page 2. Any questions, comments on that? Town accountant, as usual, they spend their expenses right at the first part of the year, so that's always over budget and remains that way.
And the professional services for assessors, I see, is down like 19%. But I don't know what that was for, but I'm assuming that they don't need much more than the $2,000 for the rest of the year. They had 12,000 to start.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Under Board of Assessors.
Yeah.
Did they do a reval or something? Maybe that's
I
what it
think
was.
that's probably what
Yeah.
it is.
So, I mean, they got 2,000.
Yeah,
out
because
there.
in August, they had a remaining balance of 2,365, so that hasn't changed, so that's still remaining the same. Okay, page 3. Any questions, comments?
Under expenses for town clerk, is that the amount of time and expenses that are related to requesting minutes of meetings and public records request?
No,
No, she gets a stipend,
yeah,
That's a stipend.
on the first page, yeah,
yeah,
she gets
under the
$1,500,
selectmen's, yeah,
$2,000.
$2,000
Yeah.
for that.
Record assessment officer stipend is 1,500, and then there's this was a different stipend.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, page 4. I think everything is okay there. Page 5.
One thing I noticed there, Mr.
Fire
Chairman, was the
department.
wages for police. It looks like they got about 72% left under wages and salaries, and 63%, roughly almost 64% under expenses. Not an alarming number at this point, but I don't know what, I know last year they went in the negative for salaries and wages, so,
It was
I
on
just
the
see-
police?
police. So I just see it starting to go less than
I
a full
know-
year.
I know
so-
call firefighters,
So just make a note, I think, I don't know what they did in August, because I don't have the August sheet, but
Yeah, in,
expenses, they got roughly 64% left.
in
Should be around
August,
75.
in August, they had 95,000 left. And on the expenses, police, and now they're at 87.
88.
Yeah. So they're back above the line from August.
So that's just a flag, not a flag, but just a note that
Right,
we'll just kind of keep an eye on, I guess.
okay. Any other comments on page 5? Page 6?
Just on the emergency management, I see that half of it's gone now. Usually, I don't know anything about that. Normally, when you do 2 payments, it's usually like in December and then in June. I just see that 50% of it's gone now in September as a stipend.
Right, the stipend is still the same, remaining. In August, it was 2,000 remaining, and then also the,
Okay, so they must get, I don't have the previous month, so I'm assuming maybe they get it in July when the new budget, and then they
Yeah.
get in January. They take it in the front end as opposed to the back end. That's okay,
Right.
that's fine.
okay, any other comments? Page 7. Any comments? Page 8.
I just have a question at the bottom, town land expenses. What is that for? Town land expenses, is that like mowing or things like that, or? It's the bottom entry.
Mhm.
Anyways, it's, they've used, not quite half yet, or whatever, 1459 has been spent, and there's 2,087 remaining. So that's well over 25%. Is it like mowing of like the common or things
No.
like that?
I don't know if it's town land or if it's town landing.
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's town landing.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It could be for a number of things, who knows, you know?
Yeah.
Yep. We'll find out. $420. Okay, page 9.
Under cemeteries, wages, right now that's around 70% left, as opposed to being 75, 70.2 to be exact. Again, not an alarming number at this point, but it just seems to be expending more than,
Yeah, but they do more wages in the summer and the fall than they will do all winter.
okay. So
Right.
that could be the expense,
Yeah.
that could be, okay.
and then a question on the veterans.
Yeah, I saw that,
Um,
18 cents.
That's
18
about,
cents.
yeah, that's about 35% roughly that's been used. Is that proportional from month to month, or is it Is there parts of the year where more is spent on the
Which
veterans
line item are you
benefits?
talking about?
You're looking
Paul?
at veterans benefits,
Veterans.
that depends on how many veterans are receiving the benefits,
Right.
as to how it's spent. Usually we end up at the end of the year having to put more in.
More in, okay.
Right.
Because it looks like we've
Yeah.
already spent 35%.
Yeah, we don't have a
of what's
choice on
allocated.
that.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
something you
so
have
that's
to
how
go
that
through.
works.
Am I
Yeah.
missing something here? Because I see they still have 59,000 in that, right, Paul?
I'm sorry.
Yes,
They
for the
still have
veterans.
59, and they started with 68, so that's, they still have.
That's good.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
No, I looked at the number on the bottom of 92,
Eastern Essex
92.9.
That's what we
Veterans.
say to the Eastern veterans to help
Right.
keep the office
Oh.
going and that
Oh, I
sort of
see what
thing,
you're
and they
looking
make
at
a
now. You're
payment
looking
for
at
I
that.
see, okay. Okay, I'm fine.
Okay, page 10.
Library's at 62, expenses, is that what you're looking at?
Right,
Yeah, it's around 62%, wages are 74, so,
and
again,
that's up from last month at 65%, so
yeah, 62%.
that's increasing. That could be because they have to spend, 40% of their budget has to go for,
Yeah, in order for them to get the grant, right?
Right.
Yeah.
okay, page 11. I think everything's okay there. Page 12, any questions?
I wonder why the interest isn't more like on a straight line, 'cause on the interest, you get 61,000 current budget and 33,000 balance remaining. That's like half of it.
Which one are you looking at?
Some are paid
Quarterly.
different times of the year, they could be paid, July 1st to September, so you.
So that basically some of them are ending in.
Yeah, it's hard to,
Same.
I don't know, unless you've looked at each one individually, I think that's already pre-calculated,
Yeah.
so.
Mhm.
Okay. Page 13.
But what about the Essex retirement then? What is, that is, is balance remaining only 15,945 out of 800 and,
Yeah, but they don't necessarily make monthly payments into those things, they make lump sums.
yeah. Well, I mean, those are pretty good lump sums, but I guess, looks like 95% of the money's already been allocated. So I mean, that's a pretty good
Page
lump
11.
sum, but.
If-
Yeah, but that hasn't
think-
changed from August through September. It's still the same amount, so that's gotta be, they pay a huge lump sum.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't that where every town is so far behind in that these are just, a token amount towards the final amount of money that we owe to Essex Retirement. I just don't know how they come up with the odd number of 854, 561, but it's, somebody's,
Right.
no, not working.
All right. We up to page 13?
The only question I had, and it's just a question of information, the Mahaffey Farm, conservation, the town meeting voted and then voted back, doesn't that 100,000 go away? I mean, didn't we vote to not, support that, because we couldn't get
That's
the grant
staying for the time being because they're working
for another grant.
for another grant.
Yeah.
I thought that one went down too, but.
They're working right now to try to pool,
Okay.
get the funds together.
Okay, so
So
town meeting
so
didn't
that
vote to
money,
take
that's
it
not,
away.
no,
Okay.
No,
No.
no.
That's good.
I think
I
they're
just had a
gonna-
meeting a few weeks ago, I attended that, and that's what they said, that the group is working on trying to put something together so they can get, you know.
Yeah, different type
Yeah,
of grant.
repurpose it or reuse it. Something else. Okay, 14.
See under wages, that they got 85%, so they got, yeah, again, a lot of money there. 82% on overtime still. The key number here is post-unemployment.
Right,
Zero.
we'll probably see a transfer on that at next meeting.
Now, they're transferring it from within the
In-
water
yeah,
department.
from
They're not taking out the,
No,
yeah, okay.
unforeseen or.
unforeseen.
Right.
The other question I had, and again, it's really not the finance committee purview, but I guess, looking at the numbers, it just, they had the repair for the water tank, they got 134,000, and I know that that's sort of a critical thing, I'm just hoping that, they spend that money, before the tank has any more cracks in it, because I know that money's been sitting there for a while. The other, question I had was that DEP survey compliance, remember, it was like critical that we appropriate this money and we need to do this, DEP's gonna fine us. It's still sitting there at $1 million. I think it's 181,000, I'm sorry.
Right.
So I mean, nobody spent any money on that. I know the department's going through some changes, but, and I know that, they've actually, gonna save the town some money because some of the things that were in that report and the dehumidification may go away. So I mean, that's all gonna be a plus to the water department, which I think is good, but, I just don't wanna,
I don't know about that, I will ask that at the next meeting, because
Yeah.
that is a good question.
I don't know how much of that money they need, of the 181,000. I know it'll go back to the water department, but
Right.
it's just a water tank
Right.
I'm a little concerned about. I just don't wanna see that.
The one good bit of news that came out a couple meetings ago, and they're not going to immediately make any changes to address it, but Paul company was either merged with another company or was absorbed by another company.
Oh, wow.
The cost of the filters is, down about 50%
Wow.
of what Paul was charging. I know that, and it's a wise decision to not alter the money that they're gonna be looking for next year, because now this new company has a lock on it, so they can fluctuate their prices at
Yeah.
any time. But
Were they a competitor to
they
Paul?
were a competitor,
Hmm.
yeah.
So did they have something that was equivalent to the Paul filter, or?
It is. And that's
No.
the one that's.
It was.
It was, right, it was. That is the one that is reduced in price.
Hmm.
But I know that there was also discussion that they're not going to alter what they're requesting to put aside, because now this one company has the monopoly and you have no idea how the pricing is going to go. So that may or may not be a benefit.
Okay, any other comments, questions? On 14, 15, I think we're to the point where we have no say-so on stuff. Interest, and 16. Okay, well, we've got a couple of things that we'll look into and get back with on next meeting. I'll put those so that we can discuss them next week, or next meeting.
Can I just make a comment about the minutes that I just noticed on September 5th? That's not There wasn't a district communication meeting that last one, that was just a school committee meeting. You know, the district committee meetings are the ones that I usually go to. This one wasn't, this was a school committee meeting that's on.
Which page are you on?
On page 2 on
Oh.
number 7.
Okay,
That's not a district meeting, that's a school committee meeting, that's different.
okay. We'll change that.
You want to make a motion for that,
Yeah.
Peter, to change it?
Okay, I'll make a motion to change
To amend.
to school committee, not a district communication meeting.
Okay, have a motion to change the minutes of September 5th,
Item 7.
item 7 to school committee. Have a second?
I second. Because we haven't had a district communication meeting in about 3 months now, it's been a while.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of amending the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye.
I recuse myself.
Okay. Minutes as amended pass. Okay. Next meeting date.
We go for the second Tuesday in November unless we hear differently that we need something done.
It's the 14th.
Yeah, that'd be
No, 7th is election
before
day.
Thanksgiving.
No,
Oh.
Thanksgiving.
What is it?
Yeah,
Yep.
we can have before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Is 14th all right?
fine.
7:15? Okay, and I'll see what I can do is getting the other towns.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion to adjourn, Sharon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.